This CU podcast segment is sponsored by NordVPN. It's what I use to keep myself safe online, and you can too. If you care about the security and safety of your online presence, take control of your internet experience today with NordVPN. I've used NordVPN when accessing public Wi-Fi, when I've traveled, at a cafe or diner or hotel, or just when I want internet privacy at home. It's indispensable for helping avoid nasty things out there like malware, phishing attacks, and ransomware. NordVPN protects from malicious sites, downloads, trackers, and intrusive ads. Threat protection is always on the lookout, even when not connected to a VPN. With NordVPN, all of your internet data stays safe behind a wall of next-generation encryption. Block malware and ads. Turn on CyberSec to avoid malware hosting websites, annoying ads, and botnet control. There's a strict no-logs policy. NordVPN does not track, collect, or share your private data. NordVPN protects your data nonstop. There's a kill switch function to make sure your data will not be exposed. And NordVPN masks your IP address, keeping your browsing to yourself. There are VPN servers everywhere. Choose from 5,400 plus servers in 59 countries. Enjoy the internet with no limits or borders. P2P is welcome here. Share large files with no hassle thanks to hundreds of secure P2P servers. And there's worldwide access. Enjoy instant secure access to hundreds of streaming websites worldwide. NordVPN works on multiple devices. One account lets you connect up to 6 devices. And get privacy on the go. Protect your online life with one-click next-generation encryption for mobile. Take control of your internet experience today with NordVPN. Right now, you can get a 2-year plan at a huge discount plus 4 additional months for free when you go to nordvpn.com/CU podcast. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/CU podcast, or click the link in the description below. Alex!
Yeah.
Just say yes, Pat. Alex!
Yes, Pat.
Yes.
Yes, Pat.
I've been railing, and Ian have been railing against Atari. Rightfully the past 3-4 years due to them driving the once heralded Atari brand to the ground with Atari crypto, Atari hotel casino ideas, Atari speaker hats, Atari watches, which never came out, I believe. Just a bunch of horrible ideas. How do we take a brand that's older people like and just drive it into the ground and try to squeeze every penny out of it? But then there's been a turn, and then the Atari VCS, which was a disaster, and we were surprised it came out. It was delayed like a year and a half. But then there started to be a machine. Then there started to be a turnaround. Oh, yeah, it looks beautiful. You want to slap his dick on it. That's what he said. But then you start seeing these reimagining games come out the past year. Reimagined Centipede and Missile Command and Asteroids, things like that. And now we're to the 50th anniversary of Atari, 1972. We're to the Pong, the early days still. We're talking pre-VCS days. We're talking, they just literally had computer space out, and they had out Pong. That's it. Then this was announced earlier this year that I was cautiously optimistic for, Atari 50th anniversary celebration. You have it, you played it, I bought it, I played it. I only got to, timeline-wise, which I'll get into, about 81, 82. This is an incredible achievement, and I'm not saying that with any sarcasm. Or this is arguably the best retro game compilation that's ever been released.
I don't even think it's arguable. Like, I think the only other options for this are also by Digital Eclipse, and this is the best one.
The Cowabunga collection, which is only Ninja Turtle games.
Yeah. And the SNK 40th, which blew my mind how good it was.
Sure. But then again, it's SNK. Most people don't care about SNK's games they had in the 70s and into the early 80s. You know what I mean? A lot of people. But the fact that they tried.
It's the quality. Yeah.
Correct. This is a historical documentation of the history of Atari. It's over 100 games ranging from the arcade to the 2600 to the 5200 to the fucking Lynx and Jaguar. There are...
The Touch Me is on
there. I was going to get to that. There's the Touch Me, which is what then Simon took it and Ralph Baer took his inspiration from. That is reproduced on here. A tabletop game is reproduced on here. There are, about 10 reimagined new games on here?
Yeah. Haunted Houses looks great.
I didn't even play that one. There's an updated Lunar Lander, which combines Asteroids gameplay.
They made Air World, There's Vector, whatever that Vector thing was. That looks awesome.
The updated Breakout's amazing. Amazing. It reminded me of the Amico one that never came out. And
it's
the
like
Amico's,
Space Invaders Extreme, but Breakout. It's
and the
so
Amico's
good.
going to come up again, by the way, because this does a lot of things the Amico set out to do, by the way. What are your general thoughts before I go into more of the details? I was blown away.
To me, like, okay, like
blown away.
I'm like, I like it, like you said, 10 out of 10. I think it's not even an argument. This is the best collection there's ever been. The vibe is like you're walking into like a very expensive AAA museum exhibit, and you're reading every plaque, and it's an Atari exhibit, and you're there, and they're taking the old graphics that you love, and they're doing like beautiful things with them. Every single piece of this was made in by someone who you finally want to make this type of stuff. I think one of the hallmarks of like gaming as a home media, which is kind of like weird to think about, like, home media was a big part of gaming much faster than it was for movies, and I think like the idea that somebody was going to make a product that was going to be this like inside the gaming inside brain is like really like the signs of people who grew up with video games their whole lives finally being in those positions to like take it from here and give you something that you were dreaming about when you were a kid. And this is video games truly given the respect of the Criterion Collection or something like that as an actual piece of culture outside of video games. And so for me, like looking at the games and seeing the sort of like beautiful way that they've kind of subtly crisped the visuals of all the Atari games to make them look really nice on an HD display, better than any like old game I've ever seen ported.
Okay. Let's talk about the structure real quick. So it's not required, but I encourage you to follow along an Atari timeline. Like you said, you're going through like a virtual museum of Atari's history. So it goes by year, and then it scrolls down in the year. So it's like when it started as a Syzygy, when they did Computer Space. There's a story. I think it was over an hour of new interviews with people that worked at Atari back then.
Scans. Like
promotional scans, you get the original Syzygy, business card. You get the story of someone who used to work at Atari found the original Computer Space at some random ass fucking farm in California and went and bought it. For example, the infamous story told by the people that were there and had to go fix it of the palm machine that stopped working because it was filled with quarters. Yeah. Like you hear this from the people that were there at the time.
It's like the opposite of watching a YouTube video by random Joe YouTuber and believing everything that's in it. It's like getting an official document from the source, the thing you always wanted from video game companies who are notoriously some of the most secretive companies in the world in terms of how the sausage is made.
Yeah, you hear about how like
what you want.
The pinball division was a disaster from a guy who worked in the pinball division. You hear about the Atari Cosmos, which always did you see that section?
I didn't see that. No.
I always loved the Atari Cosmos because it's a really interesting story. It was a handheld that was set to come out, and I believe 81 or 82. It was a handheld with LED, but it had 3D holographic images that still come up, new old stock on eBay. They never produced it though, and the story came out that. They refused to make it. They had 100,000 in pre-orders. The engineers went there to the toy fair and they got a bunch of pre-orders from retailers, and they never made it. And I've only seen one. Supposedly there's only one that still works that exists. But I've seen the one with its box, the model at the Video Game History Museum used to parade it around. So you're learning about all this really cool shit. And not all of these games, unfortunately, have a playable version. Space Duel, for example, one of the early ones in the 70s, did not have a playable version. But a lot of them are playable.
Yeah. The prototypes. Yeah, it's so cool.
A lot of them do. And then some even have the reimagined ones. And when you play the games, this is shit you can't get from an FPGA mister. You can have like the cabinet on the side, like you really see if you're playing it. You can have I kept the default filter on, monitor filter how it would look in the arcade. You can take it off if you want. You can change the perspective you want. You can adapt the controls, the sensitivity of the analog stuff. You can change that. on it, because that's my only minor quibble. Is like it's kind of tough to play Warlords using the sticks of the Pro Controller, stuff like that.
There's not really a great way to.
There's
do
not
that
a way to do it.
yeah.
But I'm saying, but they gave you every opportunity to, like, at least you can adjust the controls, the sensitivity. You can do that. Playing Tempest was still amazing. Tempest is one of my favorite Atari games. So
Yars' Revenge, the remake, is also.
I didn't even get there yet because I'm going through every piece of material.
You can do the trick where you flip back and forth between the Atari graphics and the pretty graphics on Yars. It's awesome.
Yeah, our pal Howard Scott Warshaw obviously is featured heavily with this, and it gives you a percentage of completion to go through and look at every artifact piece. Even just to click on it, you can zoom in on things, promotional flyers and things like that, instruction manuals from like the arcade. So
there's the unlocks too. There's
unlocks for that.
There's locked games that have like hints, like puzzles of how to unlock them.
Well, I believe at least one you have to like do a complete, like look at every artifact and go through it. For example,
but if you click on each one, it has like a little rhyme that like gives you a clue of what you need to go look at. It's really like going to a museum and following like the kids course. You know, like
I haven't even got off the timeline, Alex. I'm like, this is a cool way to play games and learn about them, going through the history. Like this has not been done to this extent that I've seen. And then, okay, we're going to throw in random interviews along the side and things like that. Like new interviews.
We're talking specifically about this product and how great this specific product is. But I think the real revelation here, and I was feeling the
that
same
Atari
way,
did something correct? Like,
well, not even that. Just like that this is something that is correct. Like this should be done constantly. Like looking at this and playing this, you know, Atari is great and they have some great games, but like, you know, as somebody my age, I'm definitely like, to me, the Atari of my youth was Nintendo, right?
Sure.
And looking at the freaking Netflix Nintendo thing that they got going on with the Switch Online and seeing this and knowing how much money Nintendo has compared to Atari and just thinking to myself, like, with a little bit of extra sparkle, we could be getting that love from these games in a way where some guy on YouTube with questionable politics isn't controlling the context of the information. I just think that's really cool. And I think that it's time. I've been seeing in general more of an interest in creators of video games opening up. Kojima has a podcast. Grasshopper Manufacturers doing these like dev diaries with Suda51 and getting into his process. Japanese companies even opening up the doors and showing things, which is so not Japanese video game industry vibes.
That's probably our influence North America and Europe probably bleeding over finally, because they realize this is important. Like history is important, legacy is important.
Video games need to mature. Games
we need to preserve this because this is, you're not going to see an Atari 100th. These people are all going to be dead. Like we're talking about, Bushnell. Nolan Bushnell's like 80 years old at least at this point, right?
Right.
A lot of these people that work in these games, they're in their late 50s to like 70s. Like the youngest person is going to be in their late 50s. This is 50 years, even 40 years ago, like Howard Scott Warshaw. So he's probably, I think he's around 60 or early 60s at this point, because he was like a teenager then, working on, E.T. That's my other complaint. Obviously, they can't get all these licensed properties.
The games that you really kind of want to see like that,
you're not going to see
Wars, Empire Strikes Back.
Well, if you want the story about E.T., you got to watch. I'm going to pump the video game years. You got to hear about Howard Scott Warshaw talk about in the video game years. We're not going to hear about it on here. I haven't gone through all of it. There probably is a slight massaging of facts and historical events to make it look more favorable to Atari. Probably. I haven't gone through all of it, for example.
I'm sure a little bit, but
that's to be expected. That's
fine.
But they did give Ralph Baer credit for coming up with the console video game 72, things like that. They didn't like ignore him.
We need culture and we need context for video games to deepen and grow even more. Like there needs to be a Beowulf of video games in 600 years.
Beowulf.
What do you think the Beowulf is?
You talk about just like the one story that writes down and tries to compile everything. Is that what you mean?
Beowulf is like the English text. It's like
the original. Yes.
Yeah. Like what is the Beowulf of video games? I think that conversation is going to be had through the publishing of many collections like this, and we start to, as a public, not just understand games that we like and games that we remember from our own lives, but starting to get that same sort of feel that you get from sports, like 100 years of Dodgers history, 100 years of Padres history.
Or 50 years with Atari. Yeah, Padres.
Yeah.
Well, there was like By the way, this collection also has clips. Like I said, this stuff probably becomes drier once you get to the late 80s to 90s. They probably don't interview people that worked on the Jaguar games. If they do, forgive me. That's probably not as interesting, though, as the people in the 70s and 80s. But there was did you see the news clip from like 73? Like the local black and white news with Bush. I said to myself, where the hell did they find this? Because it's talking about like shipping out. They want to ship out like 3,500 Pong units all over the U.S.
Well,
or
it's
whatever.
like it's
and I'm like, this is amazing.
Right? It's the Video Game History Foundation, Digital Eclipse. They're like buddy, right? Isn't Frank like still?
Well, he used to work with them. Yes.
Yeah,
he used to. But obviously, everyone knows each other. But like, yeah, this is a ton of love and care. The fact that they basically have new games in here, a new Quadra Tank game. I played that 4-player game.
That should be in a bar. That's a great idea.
It was kind of tough for me to get used to because it's like a real tank where you have two different movement.
4-player combat, dude. Let's go. Like, come on. I know you love combat.
So that's my only quibbles. You can't tell the history of Atari without games like E.T. and their horrific Pac-Man port. Obviously, that was never going to be in as a part of this or mentioned. Stuff like that. You can't though. You can't tell the history of it without the lows. You can't.
No. But there is a Pac-Man museum. You know what I mean? Like I love that the trend is out there. I mean specifically, I want to be able to play the crappy Pac-Man 2600 port on this collection, and I want to hear them talk about how it was a disaster and they knew it when they were developing it, because that really is a game that sunk the industry. Was that? Give it 25 more years, and I'll be comfortable enough, I think, to talk about that.
The other
talk about their mistakes too.
Sure. The other dorky thing, you cannot alter dip switch settings in any of the arcade games.
Yeah.
That would have been nice, but they probably said, we're going to leave it on the default, but it would be nice. They can always update that easily in an update, though.
It's such a clean package that I think that a little bit of stuff like that's like you're getting into because when you traditionally, even when, like, for example, in certain instances for a guidebook, is like the Williams Arcade Classics. There is the Namco collection. You can update the dip switch settings when you want to play Tapper or Spy Hunter. You can put like the bonus points levels, the extra lives. That would have been nice, but like you said, this is more consumer friendly. It's not like you know what I mean? Like, it's not for like that expert that wants to clean. It's a clean, beautiful thing. It's for kids and adults alike.
It's
to like
dumbed down, damn it. It's dumbed down.
Yeah. But shout out the Rare Replay, which is another beautiful, like,
never played that one.
It's really well done. And I mean, the amount of games that's on there, they go from, crappy arcade games from a long time ago to like Xbox 360 on that one, which is wild. But like all that stuff, that's good. And I think that even more so than like specifically Atari, which I really think like is a great place to start just because it's such an important company to the history of video games. This is the type of stuff, if you're like a lifer video game adult, this might be something you might want to have a look at and enjoy games in a less self-centered way. I don't know how to describe that better, but like less about your experience and more about being a gaming person in the big conversation.
I think the value is incredible. I'm not saying that I'm never going to be a person that'd be like, oh, they should have charged $120 for this. But for $40, you get 100 games, which is like
nuts.
And more than any of these other retro compilations. You get Lynx and Jaguar games, which never are put on these compilations for the most part.
They just look so awful on your computer. Like, and this is a revelation.
Plus, Jaguar is arguably the hardest console to emulate. It's one of the top 2 or 3, along with the N64 and like Saturn, for example. You get that. You get all the historical stuff. I'm like advertising for, I don't care. You get all the documents you never saw before in your life, all the video clips you never saw before in your life, the new interview stuff. And you get up to like 10 brand new games.
Freshly developed games. The thing that's also like, did I talk about Airworld already?
No, you didn't. I didn't even get to that. So they basically took what they finished up. Airworld was produced originally. It was one of the Quest worlds that was never made.
Yeah, which is like a game that's like, that'd be like if Half-Life 3 came out in 50 years.
So imagine if you had Fireworld, you had all those games when you were a kid, and you're waiting for the fourth game to come out. Is it third or fourth? It's a fourth one, right?
It's the fourth. There was supposed to be like a treasure hunt, right? Like there was like a real life treasure hunt happening with those games.
Yeah, they commissioned jewelry and swords and shit to get made. And I think for the first couple contests, they might have given out stuff, but who the hell knows? Yeah. So they basically finished up a game that should have been finished almost 40 years ago.
That's like unthinkable, territory.
No, I'm like, this is the bar. I mean, you're talking about to someone. I mean, I was buying these compilation stuff at CompUSA on CD-ROM when I was 14, 15. That was the first sort of generation of these compilation packs in the early 90s on Super Nintendo. You had a 2 or 3 different compilation carts. Then I had like the Activision Atari one that I bought for probably 10. I bought that for like $15 in 94. This is $40 20 years later. Account for inflation. This is like almost the same fucking price. And it's 1,000 times better than that Activision pack I got.
It's mind blowing. And honestly, like, I don't know what the vibe is in Japan with regard to this type of stuff. Like, I know that I would say as a layman, as a lay person, I would feel like there's more compilation. There's more respect for compilations in Japan.
Sure.
You know, like you'll find like, oh, like they release like every Dragon Quest game, or like every, like the Mario All-Stars, like Japan only Wii one or whatever. Like, I don't know what the vibe is there, but I think it's interesting right now that like Digital Eclipse, specifically, name drop, Digital Eclipse is like doing a great job with this.
Sure.
And the only other place I'm seeing it coming out of Japan as a Western consumer is in places like the Sega Genesis Mini, where they're also like making new Game Gear games and making like, you know, they're having fun with it. And M2 and Digital Eclipse are the companies that people should be looking to. Like, if you're an industry person and you're watching the Completely Unnecessary podcast, I've been led to believe that some movers and shakers in the world are listeners to this.
What did I tell you? I didn't tell you that, did I?
I'm just saying.
Are you hearing things?
No, you know, this is a well-known gaming podcast. There's only a few of those that are truly listened to by
for retro.
Who make the decisions. There's only a few that people care about. And so if you're listening right now, these are the people that you need to either hire or look to get your games out there. All those games that are languishing in like, maybe we should do a remake of this, maybe we should do whatever. This is your meal ticket. I have another meal ticket for you that I'll pitch to you later, but this one is the only one that there's a precedent for.
Before we transition to the next topic, I will just say this. If Nintendo put out one of these, say just all their games in the 70s, arcade games, it would sell so many out of pure curiosity and people not knowing what Nintendo made other arcade games in the 70s, or they actually made a Wild Gunman like with real people on a projector. Like that would be such an interesting product. Even if it didn't have a ton of game stuff on it recreated, you probably could try to recreate you could find an old print of the Wild Gunman one and try to do, you know, like use your Switch remote to shoot or something. You probably could do stuff like that. But the point is like, there's a market now, I think, for this type of stuff that's done to this quality or close. And you could probably honestly do these now, like Cowabunga Collection. You could probably do one for obviously the Mario games. You can do one for like the Metroid games, and throw in all this material behind the scenes and interviews. This is, I think, opening up a brand new avenue of game preservation and sort of historical documenting that I did not expect to this. I was hoping, but like this is the standard. I'm happy to say
it's the 90s all over again. Like I wouldn't have. I'm a big movie watcher. My thing is I'm a big movie watcher. I have a huge VHS collection that I now don't really use that much, because in the 90s when DVDs dropped, what convinced everybody to buy all the movies again? You know, like literally was just all the extra crap that was on there, and being able to see the movie in like high fidelity.
Deleted scenes, director's commentary. Yeah,
like
absolutely.
the Criterion like collection.
Remember that wacky one of the earlier DVDs I still own, the Memento DVD, which had like you like figure out a puzzle in order to access stuff.
Yeah, that was incredible. That's in the Atari collection. You know, that's
kind of yes, not that obtuse. But,
you're right, but yeah,
like
we can
guess
watch the movie
symbols
backwards. Yeah, I have that exact same copy. But I'm just saying, man, like Nintendo's flirted with greatness. I've seen those little handhelds they've made. You know, those things were excellent. Those are a nice little reverent product. You know? Same thing with the Game & Watch collections that they used to put out on Game Boy.
They flirted with it, but we'll see if they jump in wholeheartedly with something like this.
The ball is in your court.
But imagine if Capcom did one just with the NES Mega Man games and maybe the Super Nintendo ones. Like it would sell nuts.
Capcom's been flirting with it too with their arcade collections that are pretty nice. You know, like they're not.
But that's not this. That's not. No. We're gonna talk with people. We're gonna find old documentation.
Yeah.
We're gonna throw all this shit at you, like you said, like you're walking through a museum. So hats off to Atari for doing this.
And they leveled that shit up hard.
And for Digital Eclipse, for this is like I want to say, I don't want to be too much hyperbole. This is like a historical document to me. And I thank you
One of the most
creating it.
important games of the year for me. One of the most important releases of the year.
Like, honestly, this should be talked about at the Video Game Awards with Jeff Keighley. Like, this should be fucking featured. They should do they should talk to, like, I'm serious.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. It's a very, very exciting thing in a very obtuse way, in a very indirect way.